Hello. I'd like to start by welcoming everybody to the CoreTrustSeal YouTube channel and this short presentation on the revision of our requirements that will be under effect from 2023 to 2025. I am Jonathan Crabtree. I'm located here at the University of North Carolina, the Odom Institute. I am the current chair of the CoreTrustSeal board. And I'd like to talk a little bit about CoreTrustSeal first, and then we'll talk a little more about the changes coming forth, and then a little bit more details as we move forward. So let's get started. A little quick background. There are several certification standards out there. We're going to be talking today about the CoreTrustSeal. There's also the Nestor seal and the ISO 16363 seal. That is a more of a full-fledged in-person audit. But we're going to be talking about this CoreTrustSeal here at the very beginning. So what is the CoreTrustSeal? So the objectives are the same as many of the other seals and certification methods, is to safeguard the data. And it gives the data producers assurances that their data and materials will be stored in a reliable manner. It provides funding bodies the confidence the data will be there for reuse. They've invested a lot of money in these digital objects, so they will be there for reuse. It enables these consumers that are consuming this data to do secondary analysis or even primary analysis in some cases, that the data is where it's supposed to be, and it'll be there in the future when they need it. And it helps support the repositories in order to show to their customers, their people in the community that they're serving, as well as their administrative, that they're doing the right thing and they're being efficient in their archiving of the data and distribution of the products that they are the custodians of. So a little background, digital objects can be found on the internet, and that's the idea here, is we want to be able to reliably find these digital objects, make sure they're accessible. Obviously, we know there's some intellectual property rights in personal information, personal health information that are not able to be freely accessible, but potential ways to do that are available to allow people to know where the data is and request those data with appropriate safeguards. But we want those data to be in usable formats. We want them to be reliable, and we want those digital objects to be able to be referred to in the future using these persistent identifiers over time. And the key here is over time. So CoreTrustSeal is an enabler of fair data. Fair data need a place to live over time, and repositories, in order to provide fairness of the data, need to be around for a long time and manage that over time. So CoreTrustSeal is an enabler of fair data over time, and they're strongly linked in many ways. So a little bit of brief history. The CoreTrustSeal grew out of an RDA alliance, the working group there on audit and certification. And it took two groups of folks that were working on seal approvals and certification systems, the data seal of approval on one side and the World Data System on the other. They came together to create a joint core system called the CoreTrustSeal. It's a peer group that's governed by a group of your peers, all volunteers that folks have volunteered to help out, and we really appreciate volunteers and always looking for more volunteers. Of course, the core of this is the assembly of reviewers. It's people just like yourselves that are reviewing applications from your peers. So once you become certified or CoreTrustSeal certified, you will put somebody on this assembly of reviewers, and you will begin as part of the community to look at other people in the community and help them achieve the CoreTrustSeal, as well as learn something about yourself, because we all are learning every day. So this assembly of reviewers definitely helps the community, but it also helps these repositories that participate learn about new things going on and keeps them current. And it really is a benefit to both the reviewer and the reviewees as well. So CoreTrustSeal, as I mentioned earlier, is a not-for-profit, community-based, very strong ties to Research Data Alliance. It's global with consumers and peer members all around the world. It's domain agnostic. We don't specialize in any certain domain. We specialize in working with these digital objects of whatever discipline they come from. It's a two-step certification process where these 16 requirements, there's also an R0, so probably I would consider 17, but these 16 or 17 requirements are documented, and there's some extended guidance to kind of guide you through those, but you do a self-assessment, you make decisions in your organization of where you think you are on all of these requirements. And then those are submitted, and 2 experts, our independent reviews from other CoreTrustSeal standard approved repositories will review those. Those go to the certification board, and the board looks at those to make sure that they're all very similar and that things are being treated fairly across all the different applications. And this is a process where it allows for that third look into it in addition to the 2 experts. Then the comments will come back to you, and then you're able to make changes and then resubmit that. And usually it takes a couple times, sometimes more than a couple, but we get those back and we get it right and we help you become certified. They are publicly available, so you want everything correct in these because you will be advertising that what your compliance is and which requirements that you meet and which you are working on. There is an administrative fee that helps provide the website, that helps some administrative support, but again, it is primarily driven by volunteers just like you and I. The certification lasts for 3 years, so you're able to claim that certification for 3 years, and then you will renew after that 3-year period. So there is a 3-year revision to these requirements, and that's why we're here today, because we're at the end of our 3 years on the current version 2 of the requirements, and we need to meet the continually changing and rapid changing nature of data and information management infrastructures. We need to be sure we meet community expectations. We get input all the time from the community. We want to be sure to feed that back into the process. But we do want to remember that this is a core set of requirements across many disciplines. So sometimes it's a challenge to balance that low barrier of entry and in order to also cover the materials to make sure we entrust that data. So the current requirements that we're under, that everyone's using up to now, were reviewed in 2019, became active in 2020, and they're good through the end of, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but as of October 31st, they're good until then. They integrated many changes in the first version through RDA certification of repositories interest group. Again, we're very closely aligned with RDA, work with the RDA members to look at things that need to be changed and move those requirements or changes into these requirements. And this new version will seek to do the same thing. So what is the process to revise this? There's lots of work gone into this. The board members and peers reviewed application of the last 3 years. We've had lots of comments over 3 years. We save all of those. We document all of those things that need to be changed, things that need to be added. So those were assembled into suggested changes and addition. The board looked at those, made some ideas, surveyed the community, welcomed feedback, did a survey for that, incorporated all that feedback into a new draft. The board reviewed and revised that draft and released a final draft. And then for a second time, the community was asked to look at the final version just to make sure we didn't miss anything egregious, any major errors. And then we come to the release of the requirements, which we're at today. So across all of the responses to these proposed changes, we've had really good response to those. Of course, it is to be assumed, since all of these come from the community, all these requests for changes came from the community itself, and this community itself is the one that was polled. So 78% agreed with all the changes, and we had some really good comments, and things were adjusted to be sure that we got even more than 78% agreement with this new changes. So here's a graphical overview of some of the changes. We did have a few, as you can see, the blue side on the right here is the old requirements from 2020 to 2022. The new ones appear on the left in the orange, and you'll notice a few things. We have moved a few things around. R7, integrity and authenticity, if I can say that word, and R09, storage, have been blended together and become a new one under technology, R14, storage and integrity. And you will note that that does change these numbers. Many people refer to these requirements as R1, R2, R3. We encourage the use of the names because things have changed now, so the R numbers won't be exactly the same. The other major addition you'll see is some terminology and some terms changed. For example, in licenses are now called rights management under requirement 2. So rights management more holistically covers many of the requirements and many of the objects that our users contain. Many times licenses was too narrowly focused. So those are the types of changes that were made in this infrastructure. And at the end of this presentation, there's a long list of track changes of exactly the things that changed. And we'll post this presentation online for folks to go through one by one to see those, in addition to some references that I'll show you later that give you the new documentation. Another fairly significant change was the compliance levels. In the past, we had 4 potential choices here, and one of them was non-applicable. We felt that in almost all cases, everything is applicable. We very rarely saw a case when it wasn't. And even when we did, we saw places where that they could have answered the question, and in progress made much more sense for those. So the compliance levels have been reduced from 4 to 2, and that's a change you will notice in the new system. We also added a new process. We ran into some challenges with the vast number of diverse applications, and many of them, the choices of whether they were in scope for certification or not, whether they were offering active preservation and actually curating the data through the data lifecycle as the data lives in this archive into the future, versus a technical service that just stores the bits and no one looks at that data or manages that data in the future. So to assist the community on these levels, the idea of levels of preservation, we've created a discussion paper linked here, and we welcome comments on this as we move forward. But we're going to add a triage process to prevent a prolonged period of time after someone submits an application for them getting a note back saying, we don't think you're in scope now. We want to immediately address those types of issues, and reviewers and staff members will take a look at these applications early on in the process, and before they spend hours, days, or even weeks combing through all of the evidence submitted, they will look for the primary goal of in scope versus out of scope, and let the applicant know as soon as possible, so as we can correct those problems there. We also added some clarification in a couple places where the term data was very narrowly focused. Often it is better to use the term digital object because many things can be data. And now that we expanded it to digital object. We use digital object much more often, as well as the clarification of data and metadata alongside each other as well. So you'll see that and terminology change through the application as well. In addition, in R0, as I mentioned, that is that 17th requirement in my estimation, but that context of the repository, there used to be a topology that was allowed you to select that, and it was very confining. So we opened that up and made a free text option and allowed the applicant to state exactly where, what type of repository they are. They can select either they're a specialist or a generalist. And if they are a specialist, they can clarify about which specialty that their repository is geared toward. So as I mentioned earlier, there's some typical changes. Some are structural changes, which, as we mentioned before, moving things down into the technology, in particular the integrity and storage. Textual changes, as we mentioned, terminology changes to make it more clear to folks, and also to make alignment with other repository and data infrastructure landscape things that are happening, FAIR data, the FAIR is fair movement, and many things that are happening in our world require us to really look at how we are describing things within our requirements. So we wanted to maintain that alignment, and some of those changes were there as well. So the next steps, as I mentioned before, October 31st, there'll be a pause in submissions so we can transition over to this new system. So the months of November and December, along with some holidays thrown in there, we also will be trying to clean up and finish the existing submissions and begin the early in 2023 accepting the new applications under this new requirement. So we need that time to make that transition. We're also introducing a new management tool. There'll be a new website you go to that will be a little bit better, we hope. We think it will on the back end and on the front end, a little clearer, and be able to launch that in early 2023. The programmers have been working hard all year long, and I have recently taken a look at the new look and feel, and it looks really good. So I think we'll be excited to announce this early in 2023, that along with these new requirements, there will be a new interface that you'll be using too. Here's a couple of examples of what I was talking about. I mentioned it earlier. Things like continuity of access was changed to continuity of service. It doesn't seem like a major change, but it opens it up and reflects more accurately the scope of the requirement as we're looking at many different applications from different disciplines and different areas. And it avoids that confusion that we also often have with access in the same sense of the FAIR principles, which are very similar, but our access is a little more broad than that, and how we're going to continue service of the archive itself into the future. The same thing with legal and ethical. It was confidentiality and ethics, which made many people think it was more in the social sciences or the health information or privacy information. But we all live under a legal or ethical norms for our community. So we felt that this opens this up and makes it a little more stronger focus. This stuff was mentioned in some of the guidance before, but we wanted to change that terminology to make that clear. So here's our final slide for today. There are the requirements here listed for the extended guidance and the glossary. Feel free to take a look at those, ask any questions. As always, let us know at CoreTrustSeal.org. We're happy to take your comments. We'll help you work through this process of changing over this new version. And as always, this is an ongoing process. So even though these are set for 2023 through 2025, we're always gathering information because we will have to review these again. As we all know, our world is very dynamic and changes all the time. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope to see everyone online soon, and welcome to our new Zoom channel. Thank you. You have a great day.